now. And that's a few seconds.
Come on in, everybody.
Hey, everybody. How the heck are you doing? Steve Dotto here. Welcome to Webinar Wednesday. And I'm just testing things out. And there we go. Good stuff. I have a feed happening here. All right. Hey, welcome to Webinar Wednesday. We got a huge audience today. Huge audience coming in today for Webinar Wednesday. That's because we got Phyllis Kerr joining us. And of course, April is here as well. How are you doing, April?
I'm great. Good. Thank you.
Phyllis, welcome.
It's so good to be here. This is awesome to come and talk to your audience. I think it's great.
Well, it's going to, you're going to be talking to a lot of people. We got already 400 people already in the room. I think we had 2,300 people sign up for this webinar. So you better be good. No pressure.
Yeah, she's
no pressure.
Awesome. I'm so excited.
Well, I'm just saying that it's really on you now because this is your webinar today.
You know, I used to be a professional performer and entertainer and singer. So, I used to have audiences of 600, 1,000 people.
Well,
so
I'm going to tell you, I used to do that too. And I realized how little that means.
Yeah. Phyllis, the Dotto Tech community is awesome. So we're excited. Don't listen to him. He's fresh.
Everybody's saying hello. And there's so many of you saying hello right now that we can't possibly say hi to you all back. But hi, Ron. Hi, Ray. Oh, hi, Kenston. Carol Ann from Saskabush, Saskatchewan. How the heck are you? Bettina is there. And we've got Stavlova from Greece, Athens, Greece. Welcome, everybody from all over the world. Welcome. Today is kind of exciting. We're going to be talking about Google Calendar today with Phyllis Kerr. And Phyllis is going to be talking to us about rocking, not just leading, but rocking a calendar-based life. So you use Google Calendar like for everything, right?
Oh, honestly, it's my second brain. It really is. I could not function without it now after using it in the way I've been using it for about 8 years. So, yeah.
8 years.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Well, we'll get into Phyllis's story and we'll get into all that in a few minutes. We'll give people a few more minutes to settle in. There's so many people in the room today that it's going to take a few extra minutes for everybody to get enrolled. Now we're going to have, with this many people online, we're still going to be doing our standard Dotto Tech webinar. Phyllis pre-recorded her demo section when she's going through rocking a calendar-based life. It's about a 21-minute video, which will be running in a few moments while that video is running. As is our usual habit here on Dotto Tech, we will be in chat answering as many of your questions as we can. Once that's done, we'll have a Q&A. We'll keep you online for about an hour today. We'll try and keep it to an hour. And if you do have to leave for any reason, if life gets in the way, if your internet connection is spotty, there'll be a replay sent out of the entire webinar. It'll be available to you tomorrow morning, and then there'll be a 10-minute webinar recap as well on the YouTube channel. So you'll have opportunity for the next 48 hours to view the replay. And of course, if you're one of our patrons at Patreon, we'll have access to the replay in our Webinar Wednesday archives, which brings me to a great big hello to all of our patrons, all of our supporters at Patreon. Dotto Tech is a community-funded channel where you folks basically support us in delivering free, valuable content such as Webinar Wednesday each and every week. And over 700, we passed the 700 mark of patrons this week, which is awesome. Which is amazing. So a great big hello and a great big thanks to all of our patrons. If you want to know more about supporting Dotto Tech, you can drop by our Patreon page. And there you can discover what perks and where your money goes. Your money goes to producing content like this, which we produce for free each and every week. So big thanks and a big hug to all of our patrons supporting us here. We do appreciate you ever so much. Now, another thing that we did this week, Phyllis, you might not know this. This is the very first week that we have been marketing Webinar Wednesday on Facebook. We've run some Facebook ads to try and get new blood in it. And it's not that we don't like the old blood that we have attending us on Webinar Wednesdays, but we're trying to kind of broaden our horizon a little bit. So I'm going to start things off with a quick poll, folks. Just before we get into it, this is a completely self-serving poll just for Steve. And this is, how many of you, is this your first Webinar Wednesday? So I'm going to publish this up now. And there it is. So you can see it's a simple question. Is this your first Webinar Wednesday? Yes or no? Those are the two options.
Wow.
And we'll just let this run for a few seconds. It's a good poll, eh?
Yeah,
you can see the results. They can't see the results yet. 25% of people, it's their first Webinar Wednesday. Wow. So that means that we should make sure that we explain what happens on Webinar Wednesday lots. So Webinar Wednesday, each week we deliver a free webinar here on Dottotech with the odd exception, obviously, Christmas time, holidays, we take the odd week off. And they're tutorial webinars on productivity or on social marketing. And the rule is we take and we give the webinar away for free, and then we make it available as a replay for 48 hours afterwards. So you can, even if you can't attend live at some point in the future, but it's something you're interested in, sign up, and then you can watch the replay for 48 hours afterwards. After that, we take that replay and we archive it. It's still available, but then it's a benefit to all of our patrons. So there's still, this is like our 77th or 78th webinar that we've done this way. So we've got a 76. Huge, sorry?
76.
76th. Okay. It's our 76th webinar. All right. So how do I end the poll here? It says reset poll. Anyways.
Oh, I ended the poll. Sorry.
Oh, you ended it. Oh, okay. Okay.
Because it stopped moving.
So 20%.
And I definitely think it's a great thing too, is that 75% of the people keep coming back week after week for the content. So it's awesome.
That is fantastic. So here's one other thing that's going to be really helpful today. Is it's going to be really difficult for us to get to all of the questions. I know there'll be more questions than we can answer, but you can really help us. If you have a question that you want to have, if you just want to make a comment, by all means, just comment here in the chat. But if you have a question, if you look on the right side of the chat window, when you're entering the information, as you type in your message, you can, how does it work here? I'm just checking it so I can see exactly what happens. As you type in, when you post a question, if you click on the little dot on the right-hand side, if you click a dot on the little right-hand side, is that how you do it? To make it a question?
Yes, you click on question.
Yeah, so make it a question. So, and that'll identify it to us as a question so that we can try and get to as many of your questions as we can. Okay, is that a deal? Sounds like a great idea. All right, so Phyllis. Yes. Let's get into things. I got to ask you, first of all, you say you've been doing this for 8 years? Yeah. Doing a calendar-based life. What caused you, like normally when I think of calendars, I just think of appointments and stuff, but you use the calendar so much more sophisticatedly than most of us, which is the reason we have you on today. But how did it all start? What drove you? Were you always a calendar girl?
Oh, no, I wasn't. I was always a Google fan, but I wasn't a calendar girl. I'm going to laugh about that one later. But the point being is that and some people know this story about me, way back in 2010, I wrote the books Facebook Marketing All-in-One for Dummies with my business partner, Andrea Vall, and the fabulous Amy Porterfield. And that was going great. And then I got a phone call from my editor, and they said, how about you write a second book for us? And I said, yes. And they said, well, we're going to give you 3 times the amount we gave you for the first one. And I said, yes. And then they said, but you have to write this 300-page book in 30 days. Now, I knew that for Wiley books, for dummies books, it takes about an hour to write a page because you're in charge of the style. You're in charge of everything. You have to research and double research everything. You have to start each bullet point with a action verb. I mean, it's really involved writing for Wiley. And so I thought, how am I going to do this inside of 30 days? I have clients, I have family, and there was just like, I couldn't believe it. And so writing that book just about killed me because I was writing 10 hours a day and doing everything else I was doing. And so I knew I had to do something about my time management, and I just didn't know what it was. And I started using the calendar in a specific way right about then just to keep my sanity because there was so much going on. I had to put everything somewhere. So I started using the calendar in the way that I'm going to explain today in the recording. But after a while, what happened is I had a nice little system going, and I started getting less stressed, and I started feeling this is great. So I shared it with some of the members of my social media manager school, and they loved it. And so, because it really helped them. I mean, if you have a lot of clients, time management is probably one of the most important things you have to master. And so I bottled it up and made it its own course. And so I've been doing that since 2010. And I have refreshed it a couple of times because Google decided, change its user interface recently, which is beautiful. So I have this whole thing. And honestly, now I live such a calendar-based life that it's an integral part of who I am and what I do. And there are a lot of people all over the world who feel the same way, who have learned this system. And I do want to say that the recording we're going to hear today lays out the fundamentals of what I think time management should look like on a calendar. And then so that everybody's on the same page. And after the recording, I really want to get into some more advanced strategies using your calendar.
Good. And I will point out that we're getting lots of questions about basic calendar things as well. So we'll get to as many of those questions after we get through the video as we can as well. So yes. we'll deal with all of your questions. But we're gonna run the video, which Phyllis recorded, which is it kind of blows my mind, and it does fly in the face of some. I just have to ask you before we start. Do you use Google Calendar in place of other tools like Todoist or Trello or any of those? It's just Google Calendar for you?
Well, I think I mentioned in the recording, but it really would be good to discuss this right now. I am totally okay with everybody using whatever they want as a step one. Paper list, to-do list, digital lists, journals, whiteboards, paper calendars. I don't care. Anything that, rocks your boat for that is a step one to me. But it's not the final step. All of that has to get on the calendar in a specific place on the calendar to actually get done.
Okay.
So that's the point.
Okay. And that makes total sense. Sort of. All right. Here's what we're going to do now, folks.
I can't wait to see it.
We're going to run the video. We're going to run the video. And we're going to see Phyllis's calendar-based life, and then we're going to come back with Q&A at the end. And the Q&A I know is going to be rocking because we're going to be talking about Google Calendar-specific things, but also procedural things about this system, about how it all works. So I've already seen the video, so it's like I know how it ends.
You cheated. That's not fair.
Well, I had to check. I had to make sure it was okay. All right, let me cue it up here. So, folks, we're going to run the video. On the other side of the video, while the video is running, of course, we will be in chat. On the other side of the video, Q&A. So strap on your productivity belts and get ready for Phyllis.
Hello again. My name is Phyllis Kerr, and I've already told you a little bit about my time management program and how I developed it. So let's just get started. So I want to reduce your overwhelm and increase your productivity. And I have a few very simple steps that can help you in that journey to live a calendar-based life. And like I said before, Google me. I like being Googled, and there's a lot I've been doing since 2010 and even before that, way back in the 80s and 90s, because I'm that old. I want to express my understanding of how it is to feel overwhelmed. And I told you a little bit about my story, but if you are having any of these particular problems, then you definitely have some time management issues. If you don't feel any momentum in your personal or professional life, then you really truly, you know this, you need time management skills. But also if your pay ratio is off for the amount of time that you're taking to do something, for the amount that you're being paid, if it doesn't really add up, then you need better time management. Because if you can learn to manage your time better, you'll be able to get these things done quicker and therefore give yourself a raise. Now, all of us would like to be feeling like this sitting on the beach in Barbados, and I did work from the balcony, and it was freaking awesome. But time management should feel like this. It should feel easy and comfortable. But most people have a big disconnect when it comes to managing their time, that they don't quite have their feet on the ground when it comes to time. They think that time is something magical and that something extraordinary is going to happen, that they can fit everything on their to-do list in a day. So let's talk about this. The one thing I need you to do as we go forward with these new rules to time management that I've developed is that nothing changes unless you decide to change. Nothing will change unless you're willing to try some of the things I'm going to suggest today. So most people will say, I'm sure it's not as simple as just using my calendar.
But I'm here to tell you, it really is. It's really that simple. So living a calendar-based life is simple and easy to implement, but you need to be willing to try. Okay, so let's get started. These are my 6 easy rules to change your life and learn to live a calendar-based life. Rule number 1, put everything on the calendar. Rule number 2, no overlapping. Rule number 3, use only time blocks or individual events, and we'll talk about all of these in a deeper way in just a moment. But this rule number 3 is about how your brain works, and so we'll get into that in just a moment. Rule number 4, set a reminder for everything. Sync your devices is rule number 5, and rule number 6 is always do a weekly review and preview. This one rule, this one change, when I started doing this consistently every week, made me so much more productive just immediately just by following this one rule. So let's get into each of these and see what they're all about. Rule number 1, put everything on the calendar. I really and truly mean everything. You know, a lot of people think, well, I'll put my dentist appointment or I'll put my phone call that I have to do at a certain time on the calendar. But you really need to put everything on the calendar. And if you have clients, maybe your clients need to have their own calendar layer. Now, I'm not going to do a lot of Google Calendar 101 in this webinar, but each client that you have can have their own layer calendar that you can show or not show inside a Google Calendar. So you have to put everything on a calendar. I have a house calendar, I have a client calendar, I have a regular Phyllis life calendar, I have connections to my husband's calendar and my son's calendar. So I have all these different layers that I can turn on or turn off to see what's going on. But if you're not used to putting things on your calendar, take the first week and just use your calendar as a journal. So on Monday, you did this for a certain amount of time, and then you had lunch, and then you did this for another certain amount of time. No matter what you did, put it on the calendar like a journal. And you'll start to find that your calendar will be showing you stuff that you probably are in denial about. For example, you might find that what you're doing during your day is not contributing to your business. And it'll be very clear if you're willing to try this, to put everything that you do on the calendar. We'll go into more about that in just a minute. But how do you put it on the calendar? Well, there's 2 big spaces to put what you do in a space on the calendar. The first one is the title, and the other is the description. So depending on what it is that you're doing, you can use the title to put everything that you've done, and or you can put everything that you've done inside the description area. For example, this one says pre-launch content creation. And inside the description area, I've put find and source the images, create the images, do the keyword research, write the drafts, create the video animations, and schedule everything. That's a lot inside of that one particular thing. Now, if I'm going to put this on my calendar, or this is a journal of what I did during this time, probably this is a couple of hours, at least a couple of hours, maybe more, on my calendar. You can, as we'll find out in just a minute, do things a little bit differently. So you can either put the whole task that you do in the calendar title, or you can put it in the description area. Keep that in mind. And as you're putting this on your calendar, be generous with your time. Again, if you're using it as a journal this first week, then you just put the exact time it took you to do these things. But if you're planning for the future, be generous with your time, especially in the beginning, because most people don't realize how long it takes to do things. Rule number 2, no overlapping for less stress. So what this means is, like I said, if I have all these different calendars and I turn them all on, then anything that's overlapping is mentally stressful, emotionally stressful, and physically in your time stressful. So if you turn them on and you are in some way responsible for the things on those calendars, you can't have things overlap. Just looking at this image underneath this red X just gets me stressed. So we want to make sure that things look more like this. Okay, this is what we want. Plenty of room between things and lots of space to do the things that we need to do. Now, in the beginning, your calendar is not going to look like this, especially if you're doing with step number 1, rule number 1, which is put everything on the calendar. You might find that this doesn't look like your calendar, and that's okay. We're just going to keep going with this. So you're going to add those other calendar layers in if you're using them and adjust them so that there's no overlapping. It's really very important to do. Rule number 3. This is where you have to understand how your particular brain works. Either you're the kind of person who likes to sit down and do a project and just do it till it's done, which means if you have a video or a podcast or a blog or something that you're creating, then that might take you all day long. Because remember, it's not just creating it, it's also doing the marketing and scheduling and doing all the things that need to be done. So if your brain works like some people, they just like one day, Monday, they only focus on a blog post and that's just all that they do all day long. Good for them. I'm not that person. I'm the kind of person who needs to break up the tasks and do them at different times. So inside of the task of creating a blog post, there's a bunch of different things. Okay, so you might and I'm going to go over this in a little bit, how a blogger would do it. But maybe there are 5 moving parts to creating a blog post. The writing, sourcing the images, getting the keywords, doing the editing, putting it up as a draft, having somebody look at it, scheduling it, and then the marketing aspect. I actually take each one of those parts of the blogging process and put them as separate times on my calendar. And then that way, if something happens in my life, which sometimes it does, I can just easily move something to a different spot. Now, also realize that if you move things from day to day and keep moving them away from getting them done, this is where your calendar is talking to you. Your calendar is screaming to you actually, hey, why are you avoiding this? Are you just not skilled in this and are procrastinating? Are you need to outsource this thing? Are you afraid to do this thing? What is it? What is that internal block that makes you keep moving things? Rule number 4, setting a reminder for everything. I remember when I first got started, I had all my devices on and reminders set up for all of them. And so all 5 of the devices would, do their little notification sounds all at the same time, 10 minutes before each new thing on my calendar, and I had to change that after a while. It was really like being in the clockmaker shop. But really and truly, setting reminders is good. Now you can adjust this for how it fits for you, and I have found that in my life that 10-minute notification has been working great. But recently I've also added a 1-minute notification because inside of those 10 minutes when I should be wrapping it up and moving to the next thing, sometimes I get even more deeply involved or distracted, so I need that 1 more minute reminder. And so I have 2 notifications set up now for every event that's coming up in my calendar. You should figure that out for how it works for you. And if you prefer email, you can do it that way. If you prefer having both, then you can do it that way. This is custom designed to however fits your brain. Rule number 5. Now this used to be a hard thing to do long ago and far away, and that was to sync your devices. But now it's really very easy to do, especially with Google Calendar with the One Google account. And so I wouldn't worry about that too much. But on the settings on your mobile device, you need to check and make sure that all the calendar layers that you have on your desktop are also visible on mobile. So that's an extra step that you definitely need to do. Rule number 6, always do a weekly review and preview. So like I said earlier, this particular step really changed my life. And that is to take a moment. I tend to do it on a Sunday night, and I review what happened during the week. Now, if anything didn't get done during the week, my personal rule is if I put it on the calendar, that means it's important and it needs to get done. So I can't just delete it or ignore it or leave it into last week. I have to look at it and say, okay, I didn't do it. And so slide it over to a day this upcoming week to get it done. Then I look at the upcoming week and I see what's there. And if you're like me, and like a lot of people, you feel a compulsion to fill up empty spaces. Try to resist that compulsion, because you need empty spaces for when things get moved or things come up. You need to have a place to put them. Now, filling up your calendar so that every space is filled up with something to do is another way your calendar is telling you, hey, you're a little bit busy here. Where is the self-care? Where are you taking care of yourself? Make sure those things are on your calendar too. The cool thing about living a calendar-based life is your calendar, if you pay attention to it and you put everything on it, seriously, everything on it, it will tell you when you're overbooked. When you get an email and says, hey, can we talk this Tuesday? And you look at your calendar and there's nothing you can move on Tuesday and nothing you can move on Wednesday and nothing you can move on Thursday, then you're overbooking yourself. So that is an indication that, okay, in my next week, I'm going to try and give myself some more buffer time, and I'm going to stop trying to get so much done in a day and spread things out a little bit. It'll also tell you when you're avoiding a certain type of task. If you keep sliding calendar events over and Friday ends up, like jam-packed full of stuff that you didn't get done that week, that means you're avoiding something. This is a really good indication that maybe there are parts to your business that you need to outsource, you need to have someone else do. It's also a really clear indication if you are setting up your week and you're giving yourself good time blocks to get things done, but you never get them done inside of the time you think it's going to take. That just shows you you're not being very realistic about time, and that you really don't have your feet on the ground. Now, this is a grandma smackdown right here, that you really don't have your feet on the ground and know how much time something takes. The cool thing about Google Calendar, again, is if you're in the middle of that task and it gets to the end of the time that you scheduled it, but you're not done, you can drag it down for another length of time and then continue working. Now remember, if that overlaps with another thing that you're going to do, you have to move that other thing down because you're not allowed to overlap in the system. So if you do the work and you're not done and you drag it down to finish the work, now you can look at that and say, oh, well, writing those 2 scripts for YouTube actually takes me 2 hours instead of an hour and a half. And then going forward, when you schedule that, you will put 2 hours down there. Now through time, you might find that you've scheduled 2 hours for writing those YouTube scripts, and all of a sudden you're very quick, and now it only takes you an hour. Good, adjust it. That's the value of the adjustable time slots on a Google Calendar, is you become very connected to what time really is and how much you're getting done. If you use these simple steps and use your calendar as a way to manage your time in the way I've just described, then you will get more done in less time with less stress. Now, there's a whole bunch of stuff to this. I've really just kind of touched on a little bit of it, but I want you to know that I have an entire playlist on YouTube that is all these different ways you can use Google Calendar for blogging, for really taking control of your own life, for successful planning. All of this I have on this Google Calendar training program, and you can just go through them and enjoy them and learn a lot there too. I also have Time Bliss. Time Bliss Without Me is a way to really deep dive into this and get lessons on each of those new rules. I also have coaching. I have a lot of people who just really need me there to help them get things on the calendar and make this work for them. So bloggers, vloggers, and podcasters, woohoo! I have a few little advanced ideas to kind of keep you sane. So I want to go over those right now real quick. Batching. Everybody's heard about batching. Everybody knows, oh, batching. But how does that look on a calendar? Okay. So you have to go back to that rule where you decide if you are a one-time block person or you're a multiple task person. On the left, you see an image where you just work on the task all day long. That's just it. You just focus all day long. You're doing all the bits and pieces of that. On the right side, you see where all those tasks are broken up into individual tasks on the calendar. So on Monday, you write 2 scripts, and then on Tuesday, you record them, and then you record the recaps for IGTV, and you use the audio for the flash briefing. In other words, you get all the raw stuff recorded on Tuesday. And then on Wednesday, you can see that you do all the editing. And you can see what a huge time block I put into that one, because that's the thing that takes me personally the longest to do. And then on the next day, one of them goes live, and then the flash briefing goes live, and then I have a 2-hour time block where it's all scheduled out through time, so that it's not just a one post and then it's done. So for me, I like the individual time blocks, but maybe you can combine all of those and get all of that done all day from 10 to 5. Good luck with that. More power to you. I mean, if you can do that, that's amazing. I'm very impressed. Also, if you're using Google Calendar for vlogging, blogging, or podcasting, you need to learn to rock the recurring feature inside of Google Calendar, where you can develop these time blocks or these tasks and have them repeat every week. And you can repeat them. For me, I have them repeat every 2 weeks, so that I have 1 week where I'm totally focused on YouTube videos, and then I have a week off, and then I have a week on, and then I have a week off, and that's what works for me. And you can totally set that up inside of the date and the recurring feature inside of Google Calendar. So again, back to the willingness. Really, if you can, jump in with 2 feet on this one, because there are so many people, once they've learned to live a calendar-based life, their whole life has changed. So there are 2 things you need to remember to say going forward. Number 1, no matter what anybody says to you, learn to say, let me check my calendar. Just say it. Everybody, let me check my calendar. Always check in before you say yes to something. Because if somebody's asking you to do something and you just say, yes, that's a great idea, I can do it, and then later you go back to your calendar and you have no room to do it, then that is really not being a realistic person. So, let me check my calendar is one phrase you should get used to saying all the time. The other thing that you should try and check yourself on is whenever you hear yourself obligating yourself to anything at all, then check that and say, oh, let me check my calendar. Or if you say, yes, I definitely can do that guest post, then go straight to your calendar and find a spot for it. So in other words, you start becoming more integrated with your calendar, checking in with your calendar, making sure you have time for it. That's a really important process to do going forward with this system. And there's just one more thing I want to talk about, and that is a lot of people use a to-do list. I'm totally fine with creating a to-do list in any way, shape, or form that you want to do it, even inside of Google Calendar, the task list. But I also consider that a first step. It is not the final step, and it will not make you more productive. A to-do list needs to be moved into a spot on your calendar where it actually gets done. And that's the way you become more productive. So I hope this has been very helpful to you, and I am going to come back live with Steve, and let's do some Q&A.
And we are back after that. A little bit adventurous at the beginning, the first 5 minutes or so. It looked like YouTube and Webinar Jam struggled to keep up, and we had a few strident comments. That's what happens sometimes. It's a live event on the internet. Well, Phyllis, thank you so much. That was awesome. You got me thinking, and you got me so concerned. I just feel I feel so inadequate. I feel so inadequate.
Oh, don't feel that
but-
way. It's all good.
No, it's okay.
I
wonder how
check
many.
my calendar.
What's that?
I said I love.
learned one thing?
Let me check my calendar. I love it.
Yes, yes. You can say that to everybody but me, April. My stuff comes in as a priority. Okay, I'm just saying.
Well,
All right, folks.
that's how I feel.
We have so many great questions that we are going to tackle with you right now. So if you have questions, keep adding them to the chat. What's going to happen is April will manage the chat, I will manage the Q&A, and Phyllis will answer the questions coming up in just a moment. But before we do that, a reminder of that after this webinar is complete today, we will be taking the replay. I will be uploading it to YouTube, and we'll make that available to you for 48 hours after this is over. And in the YouTube playback, you can play back at double speed, or you can fast forward past sections that might have hiccuped for you. So you will get access to all of the content. And Phyllis's stuff was absolute gold. As well, there'll be another YouTube on our main YouTube channel. Will be a 10-minute recap where I go through her 6 steps. We cover her 6 steps. So that'll be there as well if you just want a refresher on that. So that's all going to be available to you. And once the 48 hours is up and that YouTube replay will be taken down, the full one will be taken down, but it'll be archived then in our Webinar Wednesday archives for all of our patrons. So anybody who's a patron, you'll have access to it in the future going ahead, which I'm sure this will be a very popular replay. And for the rest of you, Dottotech is supported through the support of our community at Patreon. And for $10 a month, people support us and make it possible for us to give these tutorial webinars on a weekly basis, plus other perks. If you want to find out how to support us, if you want to become part of our community, we appreciate it big time. You can check us out at patreon.com/Dottotech. April's dropping the link in right now. And there you can find out about all of the perks that you get for being a member of Dottotech. But the biggest one, of course, is the Webinar Wednesday archives and the perk of being part of our community and supporting us and knowing that your money is being well spent to help us produce this content. So thank you very much for all of you. Next week, we're going to be staying on the productivity bandwagon. For all of you concerned about the world of Evernote, as I am concerned about the world of Evernote and wondering if there's an option to Evernote, there may be, and that option is Notion. It's an app that I've been looking at, we've been playing with, I've been noodling about the edges of Notion, but Francesco D'Alessio will be joining us. He is from Keep Productive. He is really showing he's become a real powerful influencer in the productivity space. And he, as far as I'm concerned, knows more about what's happening with Notion than anyone. So keep your eyes open for next week. If you are in the Evernote world, if you are and you want to continue this productivity discussion, we'll be looking at Notion next week, which is, I'm really excited about. I'm really, really excited about that. All right. Not that I'm not excited about this now. This has been great. I was really, really excited about this last week, Phyllis, just so you know, so you don't feel bad.
It's all good.
Right. Okay. Are we ready for the Q&A? Have I left anything out, April? All right, let me jump over to the Q&A.
You did not. You did a great job. Covered it all.
All right. So there are so many questions. Here's what have we got? We've got 20 minutes left before the top of the hour.
Lightning round. Let's just do it.
We'll do them quickly. We'll answer as many questions as we can. At the top of the hour, we'll let you folks know that we've reached the hour. We will continue on past the hour, but if you have to leave, of course, you can catch the replay, and all of the Q&A will be in the replay as well. So CM says, if possible, please ask about integrating with other products like iOS calendars. And that's the business of syncing across all of your devices. If you do you recommend people just stay with Google Calendar, or are they okay to use the calendar that comes in their phone or other place and then syncing those calendars across?
I'm really kind of biased about this because I am a Google fangirl, and I think you should use Google products no matter what your device. So I have to say that Google Calendar to me has more flexibility and features and the ability to sync it. So I always suggest people test it first off and see which one is better for you. But I think just having Google Calendar on all your devices synced up is your best bet for staying productive.
And can we say that even if you don't want Google Calendar, if whatever calendar app you choose, use it across all of your devices? You can use the same technique that you're talking about.
You can say that.
So if you're in the iOS world, you can use the iOS calendar and iCal, and you're still following the system.
Absolutely.
Awesome sauce. All right.
Now, there was a
Next
question about Outlook. I want to answer this one real quick. There has been a history with Outlook and Google Calendar, whereas they would sync properly, and then they took away the ability to sync, and then they brought back the ability to sync. Mm-hmm. And I think your best bet is just go and Google syncing Outlook with Google Calendar. There's some instructions there. It's really easy to set up.
Okay. Bettina asks, how to back up. Years ago, I had my Google Calendar suddenly wipe out everything, and it was very scary. Is that an issue anymore?
No, that's not an issue anymore. Don't worry about that.
Okay. Next, David says, the difference between using Apple Calendar in the ecosystem. Okay, we've already answered that one. I should have. That's okay. Sorry, David, we already answered that.
I want to say while you're finding the next question that I think people have the hardest time with step one in this system, and that's putting everything on the calendar. And because we're so used to only putting in dentist appointments and car appointments or whatever, but using it as a calendar-based life is everything goes on the calendar, everything. And if you feel like you can put everything in your life, personal and business and family and everything on one calendar layer, cool. But you might want to have different calendars, a business calendar, a personal calendar, a house calendar. I have my husband's calendar that I can see his calendar. And so you can decide to put those. If you have clients, then you want to share a calendar with them, then that would be a separate calendar. So it's really, you customize it to the way you need it and the way you work.
Excellent. Sandy says, when entering on Google Calendar on iPhone, it double enters. What am I doing wrong?
Well, that's very interesting. I've never heard of that problem. Do you have any third-party things set up, like if this and that or something, maybe that's, moving things over twice? I don't know. I'd have to sit down with you and your phone.
It's probably due to some sort of a syncing issue.
Yeah.
Okay, Sharon says, how do you get rid of birthdays and holidays on the calendar?
Woohoo, very easy. You go into your settings and you can do it on your mobile app. Also, you can do it on your desktop app. You go into your settings and then you look at the calendars and you have to hover your cursor to the right of it. Although it's like those invisible things that, everybody uses for the UI now. So you hover your cursor over to the right of it and you can hide the calendar. You have to play around with it. It's not obvious when you go in there.
All right, that's good. Is there a feature in Google Calendar that lets you calculate the age on each birthday? This is from Susan.
Oh no, but that's an awesome add-on. You should develop that and then tell me about it.
Okay. So one of the things about Google Calendar is you can extend and you can add extra features by plugging things in because it's browser-based. So so there's quite often we could do a whole show just on extensions, I'm sure.
Yes, there's a question here about Trello. I want to answer this question about Trello because it was asked many times. And yes, you can use, like I said, Trello is an excellent first step. Inside of Trello, anything you put with a date will show up in the Trello calendar. To sync the Trello calendar with your Google Calendar takes another app. And I think it's called Kronos. That's off the top of my head. But if you don't use that app, the sync only happens like once or twice a day or something. So you have to use an app that keeps it continually synced up.
Okay. Let's see if this one broadcasts. I'm not sure because he sent it as a private message. Does it broadcast? Yes, it does. Okay.
Yes.
I have an old Google Calendar and one account that the email is going away. How do I easily transfer all my past and future events to the new Google account?
Oh, I'm so sorry. I have not found an easy way to do this, so I'm really sorry.
Google Checkout, right? I think what you'd have to do is you have to go through the process of going to Google Checkout, download the whatever type of file
Everything.
it is. It'll be an HTML file, HTML file, and then you're going to have to re-import it. It's not going to be an easy process.
There are instructions to do that. You can, again, just Google that one. There are instructions, but it is not what I would call easy.
Yeah, and
maybe on a geek level, it's a geek level 6 or 7.
It's a project. If we want a hard copy of our calendar, how do we change the font to get all the information and the field of each corresponding day? And that's one area that Google sucks, is printing.
Yes. Yeah. Well, actually, printing is getting better. I noticed the other day that I could, there was a nice print interface, but as far as getting the font size to change inside there, that's very much of a challenge. especially for people like me. And I put the actual task in the title of the event on the calendar, and that event title might be very, very, very long. And so it looks great on desktop and it looks great on mobile, but when you print it out, it sucks.
Yeah.
Can I say that on data? Are you going to have to like bleep that one out?
No, we're
Good.
fine. We've already pissed enough people off today. It doesn't matter. When anybody that's still with us is our friend. We figure out this point here. All the haters have left for the most part. Unless April's still dealing with a few. Now this Rob's question is kind of, I think it's interesting. So he downloads the schedules like NCAA playoffs and NFL playoffs. And so they're the same event every year, but the dates shift every year. Like the Super Bowl's on a different day every year. Is there a way to automatically subscribe, I guess, to those calendars, or do you have to do it year by year?
Actually, there are some of those calendars are in there, so I'm not quite sure, because if you just have it turned on, it should go into the right place on the calendar.
So make sure, Rob, that you have downloaded the what do they call the automatic calendars? The ones that are all saved. They're
other calendars. There are other calendars.
Other calendars. Where you and then if you're subscribed to the NCAA calendar, I'm sure that it doesn't change year by year. So you're probably fine as far as that goes. Good. Okay.
Yes. And you can, and if you need a longer answer for that, just message me and I'll answer it for you.
And Tejas asks, and it's interesting, a lot of people on the birthday thing. How do I use Google Calendar to schedule clients' associates' birthdays such that on any given birthday, wishes are automatically sent as an email or a Facebook post?
That sounds like a Zap or if this and that applet, don't you think? Yeah.
Yeah. So you'd program it as an IFTTT.
Yeah. So just go to ifthisthenThat.com or ifttt.com, and you'll have to hook up your Google Calendar and your Facebook page and all that kind of stuff. And then you'll just have to set it up from there.
Alex's question opens the door to many to a really great topic area, which is how can you give clients access to your calendar so they can book appointments with you, or do you need a different app or plugin? And there's a huge variety of different scheduling apps that you can look at. We've got a video on Book Like a Boss. What do you use?
I've used all of them because I've tested all of them.
Which one do you like the best?
I liked Calendly, but but there are other ones. I would just do your own research because there are wonderful things. Now, it used to be that you could open up your calendar and you could have appointments. You could create appointments inside a Google Calendar, but they moved that into G Suite. So that's not in a regular Google Calendar anymore. It's in G Suite. So it depends on if you're over there.
So, Alex, there's a variety of services that you're going to have to research yourself. A lot of the world uses Calendly. We've got a video on Book Like a Boss, which we use on Dottotech. Full disclosure, we're an affiliate for them, so I make some money if you buy that one. But those are the tools that you use. And typically speaking, it's going to cost you between $12 and $30 a month to have that service of people being able to request a meeting with you and book your calendar appointment. Yeah. So it's a great space, and tools like Calendly have done a really good job on it. Valerie asks, is there a quick and easy way to switch from iCal to Google Calendar? You want to migrate? You've got your whole system open. Is there an easy way to migrate?
Calendar is really easy. You just go get the URL of the other person's calendar, or they share that calendar with you, and then you can bring it in and see it. So again, if there are a lot of iOS questions, I can build a quick one-page answer sheet for all of those to answer all of those. I'm happy to do that.
Oh, okay, that's great. Okay. CM says, if not already discussed, can you please talk about archiving past calendar entries? Some of us need to do that.
Okay, so
Google Takeout?
But if you're in a calendar and you just archiving, you want it to disappear off your calendar completely, because really I don't advise that. I like to keep up all calendar events, and then because it's a journal of sorts, so you can go back and see what you did at a certain time. I can't tell you how many times I have needed to go back to see something months and even years ago when I did something and was glad it was still there on the calendar. So again, it depends on why you would need to archive it, but I wouldn't archive. I'd need more information to answer that one for you. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay. Next, Steve, I think, oops. Oh, I lost that one. Sorry, I deleted somebody's question. Sorry about that. Is there an easier way of setting up reminders? Steve is asking. It's not this Steve. It's another Steve. Is there an easier way of setting up reminders?
Google Voice. You just set up reminders and you say, I'm not going to say it because my phone will do it, but basically, hey, you thing over here, remind me to do such and such on Monday at 4:00, and it will put it straight on your calendar.
And that works on the iPhone as well with Siri.
Yeah.
And if you're using, if you're set up on Siri with the iOS, syncing the iOS calendar to Google Calendar, it will then appear on your Google Calendar, right? Is that the only way to do that? Yeah.
Yes, but I do want to say this. I'm not a fan of reminders because where they put reminders, you can't change the amount of time that thing is, and so it just shows up on your calendar, but you can't adjust it, and which actually brings up another point that I want to point out to everybody, and we're going to attempt to show this, but on your mobile calendar, and I'm on a Pixel, so it'll look similar to this no matter where you are, on your mobile calendar right there, if you click the three things at the top, you'll see that I have mine set to... You
got to hold it right in front of your face because we don't have a very big image of you. Okay. Yep.
I have it set to day view. And the reason I have it on day view is because I think that Google's schedule view, that looks like this, is extremely terrible for people who are trying to get a firm grip on time management because it does not show you the actual amount of time. You'll have 4 things on that list and they look like they're the same amount of time, but one could be an hour and one could be 5 hours. So I don't advise doing the schedule view on a mobile app at all, ever, and to use the day view. Because this is the thing.
Pretty pictures, though.
I know. It's very sad. But here's the thing. The thing about time management, why people have such a hard time with time management is they are disconnected with the realities of time. And you have to relearn how long something takes you to do, how short something is. And the only way to do that is to see a realistic time block on your calendar. So I can't stress this enough. And this is like one of the biggest problems I have when I coach people is that they think something's going to take a half an hour and it takes them 3.
Yeah.
Every time.
That's good. That's wise advice, Phyllis. You are a wise woman. Stefan says, and this is not really for Phyllis, but is there a link to download this whole podcast? Well, it's not a podcast. It's a video. It's a webinar. And we will be emailing out a link to the replay for you that you can view after once we are done. Peggy, is there a reminder? Is a reminder just a calendar entry or is it another tool within the calendar?
It's, I would say, another tool within the calendar that's voice activated, which also brings up the task thing inside of Google Calendar. And I know some people had this question, and I did go over it a little bit in the video, but in case you missed it, you on the left side of a calendar, you can turn on the task column. And it's a to-do list. Basically, it's a to-do list. And if that is a good first step for you, then use it. Put everything down there. Just get it out of your head. Especially if you're starting out with calendar living like this, you can just use that to-do list to get everything out of your head. It's only the first step. You need to move things over to a time block on your calendar. Now, if they don't have a time integration with a task, you have a date integration. So you can put that task on a date, but they put it up in the all day field instead of actually in the actual day that you're working on it.
Yeah,
so
that's where I get messed up.
Yeah. So again, if you need to get it out of your head, it's a great place to get things out of your head, but then you're going to have to physically move things to the calendar.
What are your thoughts about the upcoming discontinued SMS notices? And it's already been discontinued, hasn't it?
Yeah.
That's sad. I like the I like the text messaging.
Really?
Yeah. I would have my calendar, my agenda texted to me instead of emailed. I like that.
Oh, that's nice. I just got a Google Home, and it's nice. And when you have it, you say good morning Google and all that, and it will pull up your calendar, but it only says out loud the first 3 things on your schedule. So I think they missed the boat on that one. Hopefully they'll change it.
Oh, there's going to be lots more integration coming in that space. That there's going to be lots more coming, and it's going to be very invasive.
I can't wait. I'm very excited about it.
Anna says, can you mark a task completed, or do you have to delete it?
Don't ever delete a task ever if you can. I change the color of the task. So, and you can, a lot of people are very color coded minded. So
your
you can
colors are beautiful on yours.
Thank you.
Your calendar looks like I want to live that life.
Oh, that's so sweet. Here's my scheme. So you can take this if you want. Anything on a calendar that absolutely cannot be moved, I turn red. So that, because my calendar is a very fluid kind of thing, and I move things around a lot. So, but if it's red, I can't move it.
Okay.
If something is orange, this is my business with Andrea. So these are things I'm doing with this particular business. If things are blue.
Is that because Andrea's Dutch?
It's just because I like the color.
It's a happy coincidence. Vol might be Dutch. I think it's German, though. So anyways,
yeah. But the thing is, on her calendar, she could have it as purple. I don't know. Okay.
I know
that's the nice part about it.
I'm not going to say I was going to be mean.
So the point being is you can color code your calendar for what works for you, and you should definitely use it. It's so easy to do now on a calendar. When you have an entry, you just right click the entry and you can change the color just like that. So it's very nice to do. You can also make your calendar always be a certain color, which is great. And I use that feature a lot. And if you're a color coded person, do it.
I think that there's a lot of motivation and a lot of comfort that can come from using colors properly in your calendar.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we should point out, Phyllis is a very graphically oriented person. You're actually an artist. You're wearing a fabric that you designed yourself, correct?
I do. I am. And I do. And it is my passion outside of this world is to create art. E-commerce is my new big joy. And so, yes, I like the color coding.
So there we
go. You can get your calendar to match your decor. You know what I mean?
There you go. All right. Debbie says she was having issues with the feed at the beginning, but you were talking about Google Tasks near the beginning of your video. And do you have some general recommendations on using Google Tasks?
Yeah, I just kind of went over that. You can use it as a first step, absolutely. But just make sure you physically move it onto your time calendar. Here's the other thing. And the coaching people I have who have the hardest time with living a calendar-based life are the ones who have to transition from a to-do list to physically on the calendar. That they've got that habit so ingrained to just make a to-do list that what I suggest for people who are trying to transition from a to-do list to a calendar-based life is to continue to make the do list, but then move it onto the calendar. Or for the first week of trying this out, just use your calendar as a journal. Just have it up all the time, and just whatever you did in the morning, you just verify that on your calendar. I worked on this for this amount of time, and that'll help you.
Now, I use Asana,
mm-hmm.
and Asana, when we create a task, we can set it to a date. We can set a due date, and that will then appear on our calendars. We can sync that to Google Calendar. Now, I'm not sure if it goes down to time. It comes
this is a problem.
Yeah. So we have to, can we go, and I'm not sure we can go in and actually edit the event.
No, you can't. But what I do is I see those things up at the top in the all day position. I find what time of day I'm going to actually work on it and make my own time block there. So from my calendar, I see. Calendar. Yes. I teach. Yeah, I actually teach this whole program when you're doing goals for the year, how you set them up at first in that all-day position in the month view. Okay. And the reason you do that is because it's easier to move things around on your calendar while they're still in that all-day position. But you just put everything down on your calendar, what you're doing in each month and all of that. And then when you've got it all set, then you pull down the tasks. You make them concrete things that you do inside your calendar.
And Steve is asking if I put my exercise time into my calendar. Yes, indeed, I do. And except it's really easy because I do workout sessions in a class environment. So when I book the class, it automatically syncs to my calendar and creates a calendar entry for me.
Yes,
So,
that's the best part of it.
yeah, I like that. So so my workouts are always in my calendar. Do you enter? Sandy's asking, do we enter recurring times? I'm not too sure what.
Yes, recurring times are very important. So here's the thing. If you're a blogger or a vlogger or a podcaster or, a YouTuber, whatever you are, there are things that you're going to do on a regular basis. So I showed you a little bit at the very end of the recording how I do recording for YouTube. And that is I have the tasks separate in my calendar. So on one day, I do all the script writing for 2 videos. On another day, I do the raw footage. I do all the recording for everything, YouTube, IGTV, for Anchor, everything. And then on another day, I do all the editing. And I just get into editing mode and I do all of that. And then I do the promotion and the posting and the scheduling. And I have all of that on my calendar. But I do it every 2 weeks. So I set them up as a recurring event. And what I do is I change out what's in the description area for what I'm working on that week. So that's how I do it. But I definitely, then it's in my calendar months in advance. So if somebody comes up to me and says, what are you doing April 5th? And I'm like, oh, well, that was my recording date. Can I move it? Is there something I can do? And so that way, those important things are never forgotten through time. So that's what's important.
Hey, Steve, It's the top of the hour. I just want to give you a heads up.
Yes, indeed. And that is. So we've reached the top of the hour. So anybody who has to leave now because your calendar says you have to go on to other things, thank you so much for spending your time with us. We will continue to answer questions. We've got a lot of questions, but we'll try and make it about 20 more minutes before we wrap things up completely here. So to anybody who is leaving now, again, thank you very much. We want to thank Phyllis and April for their support. And a reminder, next week, we're going to be talking about Notion with Francesco D'Alessio. So we're going to be talking about Evernote alternatives. That might be another way to say Notion. So that's what we're going to be doing next week. Till next time, anybody that's leaving, have fun storming the castle. And for the rest of you, we will continue with our Q&A. Are you okay for about 20 more minutes, Phyllis?
Oh, I'm totally fine. I moved everything off my calendar for this afternoon.
Well, that is just a little bit of awesome, isn't it?
And you know what I'm going to add to my calendar is making this sheet for your iOS people.
That would be great. That would be awesome. An iOS cheat sheet. Yeah, and we'll send it out in our email. How long? When can we expect that?
Oh, hopefully by the end of the day, I can get it to you.
That's good.
Now, but here's the thing. This actually brings up a point. There are people who feel compelled to fill up the empty space. And they feel like if they have an empty space on their calendar, they have to put something in there. And this is where your classic workaholics really get themselves into trouble. And so you have to leave empty space to be able to move things and to add things as you go along. So when you plan for your upcoming week, don't try to fill all the empty spaces. Okay, it's really important for all you workaholics
that's
out there.
A lot of stress to have the whole page filled because then one thing goes over something and you're screwed.
That's
all
right.
right.
And that actually brings up one more small point. You can add a buffer time between events inside the settings inside of Google Calendar so that it's called, I think it's Easy Meeting or something, where you have a 10-minute break before you can physically put something on your calendar. It will always do that.
You could also tie this in with a system like a Pomodoro method where you say in an hour block, I'm planning to work for 50 minutes and you set the timer 50 minutes, then you have a 10-minute. So you have sprints and and rests. So using a tool like a Pomodoro timer would also give you that, would work very well if you were that disciplined. And that's actually would be a good way to go. A little too constricting for me. ABM says, how would you suggest moving emails?
Yes, I do this all the time.
And I love this feature in Google Calendar.
I do this all the time too. So you're on the email, you go up, and I'm just going to go over to make sure that I'm saying it correctly. But basically there's 3 dots and you, hang on.
When you're in an email, it's not when you're in in your inbox, but when you're in an actual email, there's the 3
you can make
an
event.
Yeah, create an event.
Okay. And when you create an event, the one thing you have to check, and this is something that's very interesting, you can move it into a calendar event, but sometimes it doesn't pull the entire text of the email. So what I like to do is before I click that, add as an event, what I like to do is I go and I copy, like if there's a link or a phone number or, something that's like really, really important, then I copy that first. And then when I hit create event and it opens up my calendar and I put it on the calendar, I make sure that that link is in there. And if not, I paste it into the description area. And it's just one of those things.
It's one of the interesting things where Google's automation and their machine intelligence, machine-based learning is still evolving. So quite often when you go to make an event, it will actually parse out if somebody's say making an appointment with you within it, or they mention a date or a time or a location, it will parse that information into appropriate fields within Google Calendar occasionally. And sometimes it doesn't work and you can't figure out, there's no rhyme nor reason to when it works and when it doesn't work. So make sure that all of the relevant fields are put in. Plus, you got to be very careful about what date it puts the event in, and you want to make sure that you manage that as you go. But that's
the other thing that's freaking awesome about the update to Google Calendar is integration through Gmail on the right side where you have the Google Calendar column.
Now, and if you just added that,
yeah. So if you're on an email. Let's say you're on an email and you open up that calendar interface inside of Gmail on the right side, you can see your calendar there. And if you just click a spot anywhere on your calendar, it will add the email directly in there. And what it does is it pulls the subject line into the title for the event. And then you can you're right there. So you just copy paste anything you need into the description and boom, it's done. It's really nice. Really, really nice.
Sheldon asks, and that is an excellent thing. I love that. There's a lot of criticism about the new Gmail interface. The calendar.
No, I love it.
One of the good parts of it.
Yeah, Sheldon and Keep. I like the Keep interface. I use that a lot.
Yes. Sheldon says, how do we use both personal and business calendars? So maybe this should be, do you have any tips about maintaining and managing in separation of church and state, I guess, in your calendars?
Yeah. If you're a solo entrepreneur, there really is no difference between your personal and business. That's just your whole life, right? If you have a team and you have a business calendar that you share with your team, then you do have to separate them out. So first you have to determine that. But if you are a solo entrepreneur, you don't have to, unless you're going to share your calendar with a family member. For example, if I wanted to share, we have this thing in our house called a house calendar, and we put things on the house calendar that will affect other people in the house. Okay. So this is a separate line calendar, but I have to turn this on before I schedule anything, because if the grandkids are going to be here screaming and yelling up and down the hall, I can't schedule a webinar during that time. So you have to think what's appropriate for you and then just design your calendar the way that works for you. It's the shortest answer I could possibly give.
And Cindy asks if we'll be alerted for the YouTube replay. Yes, everybody will be alerted. Check your email. We send out an email follow-up it'll have Phyllis's sheet that she's working on as well. There'll be the replay links in that, as well as an invitation to next week's as well. David's asking, what are the archives for Patreon members? The archives are archives of these entire webinars, as well as any supporting materials we have. So this is number 76, did we say, April? So this is our 76th webinar. So they're all in the Webinar Wednesday archives. Each full webinar is there, as well as any supporting content that we created around that webinar. So that's a big part of what the Patreon bonus is.
And Tony was asking about my YouTube channel playlist. It's the easiest quick link is phylliscare.com/calendar training. And just got to spell all of those things correctly. Phyllis is hard.
And we'll include that link. It will include the link to your playlist in your YouTube channel, all of your stuff in the email. Rick says, I have multiple Gmail accounts, but want to combine it into one calendar.
Yeah. Okay. So, here's the thing. You'll have to have up at the top right of Google Calendar, you can switch accounts. Okay. So you go to the account that you want to pull in to see on your other account, and you share the calendar with the other email. I'm trying to draw a picture. And then you'll get a URL, and you verify that you're sharing it. You have to go back to the other email address, verify it, and then you'll be able to see it in what's called your other calendars. So there is a process to do it. It's just you're sharing viewing and editing permissions between two email addresses. So there is a way to do that. And if that was confusing the way I described it, I will be happy to answer that in a little longer note.
Okay. Next question is Adria, who is asking, can you integrate Google Sheets with Google Calendar? And I'm not sure why you'd want to.
There's probably some sort of script somewhere or third-party app or extension or might do that. That's a great question, but I don't know. I've never tried to do that. Sorry.
Oh, Sandra's asking, what is vlogging? Vlogging is when you create a video blog. So you, it's instead of writing a blog post, you create a video on it. And we do a vlog, which you can find at the Steve Dotto YouTube channel as opposed to the Dotto Tech YouTube channel. So it's blog content, but video. Today on, somebody just clicked on one.
Oh no, that was me.
It's okay. A few procedural things here. Sandy's asking what headsets Steve use. I actually don't use a headset. Most people need to use a headset when they're doing a webinar because of crosstalk or feedback or fullback from the audio, and you'll get an echo. The reason I don't is I've got a really super sophisticated, fancy ass mixer here, and it's got a setting called gated, which means that it actually isolates the sound coming back. And that's why I don't need it. And if I did, it's right here, and I would wear that big one. So it's right there. So, but I don't need it because I'm special. Okay. How are we doing for time? I'll go with 11 minutes. Sandy asked.
Yes.
What's that? Yes.
Go ahead.
If you need to make several phone calls, would you put all of them in one space? So that's all right. Somebody else asked about batch processing, and they asked what batch processing is. So it's really kind of related.
All right. So here's what I like to do. Just so you know, Andrea and I call all our premium members at each launch. We actually phone call everybody. So I take the people and their phone numbers, I put it into a description area at a time block on my calendar, because I know that I'm going to leave a voice message if they're not there. Right. But if I have to physically speak to somebody, several people, I do it as separate on my calendar. And then if I don't reach them, but I still need to talk to them, I will move it to the next day at a different time. So it depends on how you're doing it. So in general, it would be better to do it as separate ones so that you have the flexibility of moving them to a different time. But if you don't have to physically talk to them and you can leave a message, then put them all in a time block, do all your phone calls at one time.
Okay. Catherine asks about tentative meetings. I give people 2 times a week to meet with me, which means that one meeting time is usually released. So I overlap admin and to do tasks. How do you suggest to book tentative calls?
I actually put both of the tentative calls on the calendar.
Okay.
And then whichever one gets verified, I just turn the other one on. I just delete the other one. Yeah. That's the way I do it.
Okay. I like this. Couples advice. Advice for couples who want to coordinate their calendars.
Yes. So I do this. I did this with my husband, and it's the same thing I tried to describe earlier, where they have to share it with your Gmail account that's connected to the calendar that you use. And then you accept that, and then you'll be able to see it as a layer in your calendar view. You can turn it on and you can turn it off. And I definitely suggest doing that if you and your husband have things that you do together or separately, but you need to know where he is at all times.
Tim says, how do you handle long-term projects that have pieces that need to be done through a number of weeks?
Yeah, so this gets into project management. And here's the thing. If you work with the team, you can use any project management program that you like. I think sometimes teams need a little extra bells and whistles to do their project management. But if you're a solo entrepreneur, you can do this straight on your Google Calendar for yourself. Now, if you want to have a project that you're sharing with another person, you can share that calendar with them so that they can see it. Okay. But as far as how do you get through the projects that need done through a number of weeks, I wouldn't put up at the top, it starts from Monday the 3rd through Friday the 29th. Okay. Don't do that. What you need to do is you need to put starting the project. This is the day we're starting the project. This is the information about it. 4 days later, checking in on the project, moving it forward a little bit. And then the day that it's due, it's due. But I also work backwards another day, make sure the project is ready to be due tomorrow. So that way it's not just a date on your calendar where something is due. This is the way I teach my blogging process too, is that you don't just put a date in your calendar, blog is uploaded on Friday. There are 10 steps to get that blog ready for posting on Friday. And all 10 of those steps need to be in your calendar. So the short answer is if you have a team project, you just create a calendar for the project and share it with your team. Now, if you are responsible for some of those things on the calendar that need to get done, you can move those on your calendar where you need them to go so that you get them done.
Okay. Cindy says, are you viewing all of the events on calendar at one time, or do you toggle to see each one separately? And that comes to the overflow. Like if you've got 8 or 10 calendars, you have to judiciously turn on the ones that are relevant, right?
Yes. And so sometimes when I'm in planning mode, like at the first of the year when I'm doing planning, I will plan out the calendar with nothing else turned on so that I just have a clear view of the project and the launches and the, projects and everything that needs to get done. Then I will go back and turn on the relevant calendars and go and then start to move things around. You can do it opposite from that. You can turn them all on and then just place things where you need them. But that's just my process. It's the one I recommend.
So Marla asks, can you use it as an organization? So is there a difference between the G Suite calendar and the regular Google Calendar that comes with our Gmail account?
Yes, there are more bells and whistles inside of G Suite for everything. So if you're using it as an organization, I suggest you go over to G Suite.
And so and you can.
And you get to keep G Plus, dang you.
Okay.
Well,
my beating heartbeat still.
I know.
Stavriloa says, can you export a period, a month, or a year to Excel or Word? I can see that could be like filling out expenses or something, I guess. I'm not too sure why you'd want to.
Good question. I actually don't know the answer to it.
Okay.
Thank you for stumping the teacher.
Stump the panel. So this one might be a little bit techie. My company uses Outlook. It's from Dave. On an Exchange server. Love Google Calendar, but cannot get my work calendar to sync. Any suggestions?
Yeah, I'll put that on the thing too. You can actually Google that. There is a process, and it with many steps involved. And like I said, they took it away at one point. You couldn't do it at all. So if you tried it a long time ago and it didn't work, go Google the instructions and try again, because they did turn some things back on.
I'm not quite sure what Deb means by this, but you might know. Is there a way to move email action items directly to the calendar with the email attached?
Yes, there is a way to do that. And the interesting thing is that
let's explain what an email action item is first.
Well, like if inside the email there's click this link or go to this thing or things like that. Yes, you can do that. Also, if you are on an email and there is a time on it and you click the time on it. I'm just trying to find one that has a time on it, and I don't know if I can find one off the top of my head. But when you click the time and add that to the calendar, it has the email link. And so if you're on your calendar, you can open that up and there'll be a hyperlink that goes directly to the email. So yes, there is a way to do that. And
Okay. The CM says he has a follow-up to his archive question, and he says that he sometimes needs to refer back to it in time, and they cannot afford to lose older entries. So he's wants a backup system that isn't dependent on Google. And I don't think our answers change. It's not an easy process, but you're going to have to use Google Checkout to pull it out. Yeah.
Yep.
That's a big challenging one. This is Phyllis. Why did you choose Google over Outlook?
Oh gosh.
Feature over feature. I would think Outlook is more powerful.
I used Outlook for a little bit of time. And then when I moved over to Google Calendars, to my mind, it was way more user-friendly and way more interesting to me personally. So that's the reason I moved. And I'm glad I did. I have not looked back. But I understand that there are a lot of businesses and industry who are very Outlook-centric. And if where you work and the world that you're in is Outlook centric, then just stay there and do all of these ideas inside of Outlook calendar. But like I said, I'm just a Google fangirl and I moved over and love it.
Steve, just so you know, it's about 20 past.
I know, and I'm looking. There's still a whack of questions, so we're not. I think we're gonna have to cut things off and say, Phyllis, you're gonna have to come back.
Okay.
That's it. Is that fair?
Yeah, sounds good.
What mic are you using, Phyllis? Is that the ATR?
I'm sorry, say that again?
They asked what mic you're using. Is that the Audio Technica?
Yeah, Audio Technica 2020 or something. Yeah,
the 2020. Yeah, it's a nice little mic, nice little USB mic, and it's really affordable.
Yes, and I've had it for a really long time.
Doesn't break the bank. Okay, folks, we're going to send out this replay to you by tomorrow morning. Phyllis has got a little cheat sheet that she's going to put together. Phyllis, let's drop in links to your to all of your stuff, mainly, I guess, to your website. Phyllis does a great social media marketing course with our friend Andrea Vall, so you can check that out. And she also has time management courses available that if you liked what you heard and you liked the idea of living this calendar-based life, I think a great way to entrench those skills would be to follow Phyllis and to let her lead you on. You've made me look at my calendar differently. I have to get you on with Mike Vardy at some point, and you guys can fight it out, because Mike's saying you don't put your tasks on calendar. It would be an awesome battle royale that we could have, which could be a lot of fun. But I like this system.
I love it.
You know what I like about it? I like the visual aspect of the system. It gives me a great sense of comfort to be able to look at a page with visual representation of what is happening in time and of what my obligations are in time. And I think that's a tremendous way to do things. And I think you might have really helped a lot of our community out this week. So I thank you very much for that.
Good. My job is done. Thank you.
It is indeed. April, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Folks, we'll see you next week. Notion. Is it better than Evernote? Is it with switching? Is it time to switch? There's some anxiety for us. That's it. And Phyllis, again, thank you very much. Make sure you follow her online, and we will see you all next week. Thanks so much for your patience and your engagement. This was a great conversation going on. Sorry if we didn't get to all of your questions. Till next time, I am